You're listening to Titans of the Trades. I'm your host, Ryan Englin, author of Hire Better People Faster and creator of the CoreFit hiring system, a proven process to help growing companies attract and retain only the best. I'm on a mission to revolutionize the perception of the trades and elevate it to new heights. After growing up in a blue-collar family, my passion for making the trades cool again runs deep. If you're a Titan in the industry and want to be on my show, stick around until the end and I'll reveal how you can be my next guest. Welcome back to another episode of Titans of the Trades. I am your host, Ryan Englin, and today's guest is someone who I have been watching their journey from afar for quite some time, and I got to meet them in person a couple of months ago and could not resist the opportunity to invite them to be on the show. As you know, I'm a big fan of tools to help you with communicating with your employees, particularly the front line, ways to engage them and keep them excited about their job and help with retention. And Beekeeper is one of those tools. In fact, it's a tool that we've rolled out with many clients, and it is, to me, it is the industry leader in solving the problem of communication between the office and the field. I want to introduce, for today's show, the CEO and co-founder of Beekeeper, Cris Grossmann. Hey, Cris, welcome to the show.
Hey, Ryan, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
I am so excited that we finally got to do this. We got to meet in person at the summit, the Beekeeper Summit. It's been a couple months now, but it was great. I love what you guys are doing over there at Beekeeper, but this is about you, so I want you to be able to share with our listeners. Tell us a little bit, you could definitely tell us about Beekeeper, but tell us about your story. Like, why did you get into this? Why did you pick this problem to solve for so many companies?
Yeah, for sure. So again, thanks for the invitation and great that we managed to get this going. Yeah. So why the Frontline and why am I so passionate about it? I would even go back to my early days. So I spent the first 20 years of my life in Mexico City. Both of my grandparents were frontline workers, so I had the fortune to spend a lot of time with them in their factories. One was a copper factory, the other one was a paint factory. So that gave me a lot of exposure to how the frontline worked, like the frontline works back then. That was back in the 80s. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, but it hasn't changed that much. It's still a lot of pen and paper, things very rudimentary in the way that you set up the operations, etc. And that's something that I'm just highly passionate on improving, streamlining, and making sure that something that is already really hard, like frontline work, can be somehow supported and made a little bit simpler by technology.
Well, and I would say, I think I've been a partner with Beekeeper, and we rolled out our first implementation probably 6 years ago. And seeing what you guys are doing with the platform and seeing I don't think you guys are just a software company, because you're so much more engaged in solving the communication problems with the front line that you really have this big picture approach to it. And I see it happening in all the new releases and development, everything else that you're doing. So you pick software to solve this problem. Tell me a little bit about Beekeeper. What's the real thing that this thing is helping so many employers with?
Yeah, for sure. So the big problem that we solve, we call it the great frontline disconnect. And that has many different layers, but it's the basic notion that frontline workers are always out there in the field. If you're thinking about construction or manufacturing, in the lines, in the construction sites, most of the time completely disconnected from the rest of the organization, right? Tends to be a lonely job, hard job, and you just don't have the whole support that folks in the office, in the headquarters tend to have just by simply turning around and getting all of the resources that out of there. So we're very passionate about closing that frontline disconnect that starts with simple topics on the system side and making sure that they have access to the information that they need to have, that they have the resources and the trainings that they need to be completing. But then above that, also connecting them with the rest of the organization to know what else is going on in the organization? How can my voice be heard better? Frontline has such an amazing and huge wealth of know-how and feedback that is really valuable and important for the rest of the organization, that feedback loop is many, many times also disconnected and not even existent. So there are so many things about this frontline disconnect. We could spend many of our episodes talking about it, but that's, I would say, the big thing we help companies do to bridge their frontline worker with the rest of the organization and get them connected with everything they need in order to do a great job.
Yeah. I love that. There's one thing that I want to call out that you just said, and it's the voice of the front line. Like they're in the trenches. They're dealing with it every day. And these are some wicked smart people. Yeah. They got ideas. But so often in an organization, communication is one way, top down. We write memos and we put it in their paycheck or we put it in their box, right? Like that's what we do.
Yeah.
And what I love about what Beekeeper does is it creates an environment that actually encourages bottom-up communication. It's not just an option. Like it's almost, if you're on the platform, it has to be there for it to work. And I love that. And I think that is one of the biggest issues we see in construction space, because these are not just out in the field or in the factory floors. I mean, there could be sometimes distributed all over the country.
Yeah.
And how do you actually keep those people not only in the know, but also how do you keep them engaged and saying, hey, I feel like I matter. I feel like I'm making a difference, because those feelings are very important in any of these blue collar jobs.
100%. 100%.
So as I look at Beekeeper, what are some of the other challenges that you're seeing employers? And this isn't, just so we're clear, this isn't a platform that's just for the enterprise. You can be a small company. If you've got 20 people in the company, this could be a great tool for you. So I want to be very clear that we're not just talking enterprise level stuff. What are some of the other challenges that you're helping these employers overcome with their field employees?
Yeah, for sure. So I would say there are two classes of issues that we help them solve. One of them is retaining their staff and making sure that the great people that they worked so hard to get into the door, train them, etc., that they don't get to the level of frustration that they just leave. So retention is one big point. And the other one is driving efficiency and productivity. How? By digitalizing and making simpler a lot of those paper processes and things that have been in place for many, many years. Nobody has looked at them for a while, but that just create a huge drag for organizations. So with those two things, we actually help organizations make the lives easier of the frontline workers, which again makes them productive and makes them stay long. I would say that's the two big buckets in which we play, and we help organizations, as you say, of any size, starting small, but also going into the big ones to really gain that type of efficiency and retention that everybody's craving for in these economical days.
Well, and especially as you start attracting or employing the younger generation, like they grew up with a phone in their hands that didn't have a cord. I mean, I still get to say that. I date myself, right? They grew up where they didn't have to wait for commercial TV and then record it. They grew up in a world where information was at their fingertips. They could do a quick search, get the information, it was there. And in some of these larger organizations, it's really hard for them to get that information. They have to know who to contact. Maybe there's channels they have to go through. They have to sit in a queue. And then a lot of times their supervisor's like, I don't know, let me go figure it out too.
Exactly.
And by digitizing a lot of those processes and providing the automations and the searches and the chat bots and all of the technology that they're used to, it can make it very easy for them to go, wow, I can actually get stuff done now, because I don't have to jump through all these old hoops.
And building on what you just said, Ryan, I think the topic that we haven't discussed, but of language barriers, is also very, very prevailing in the frontline. And that is one of the major barriers that we also help companies remove by providing all of the resources that you mentioned, but translated to over 100 different languages, no matter what they speak. Because that is one of the bigger barriers, as you said, like I want to go talk to my manager, but if I don't even speak English as my first language, that's a big hurdle, right? So getting those resources in your own language is a big one.
One of the things that we look at a lot with companies that do have a large section of the workforce that does have English as a second language, or maybe barely speaks any English, is what are you doing to support them and onboard them in their native language? Because you want to engage an employee, speak to them in the language they know, right? Like don't force them into yours. And I remember the first project that we launched, that was a big piece, is that people could just click translate and it knew what language they wanted it translated into, and it would translate it right there for them in real
Exactly.
time. And as technology is advanced, we're starting to see them do more and more of that stuff, where not only are they giving them the support and the training for learning other languages if they need it, but also they're starting to have real-time caption translates of their Zoom calls and those kinds of things, because they understand that embracing those people is going to make them feel like they belong there. Which leads me to one thing you said too. So retention is I'm super passionate about retention. And I actually don't believe we have a labor shortage in the trades. I think we have a labor crisis. And that labor crisis is brought on by us not being intentional about retaining great people.
I couldn't agree more. I think labor shortage is just a symptom that people are just not happy and they move on. In our latest survey that we will be also releasing next year, we're finding that still 45% of frontline workers have changed jobs in the last 12 months. Still a lot. That's still a lot. So it's people that were already there, but decided to go somewhere else because of frustrations, because things were not exactly to their expectations, or whichever reasons. And that's a big issue. Totally agree with you, Ryan, that being intentional and focusing on the retention piece is the solution to what is called labor shortage and this labor crisis that you're talking about.
Yeah. And so I look at retention, and there's a few different ways we can retain people. And I'd love to know your thoughts on some of these. One is we can onboard them well. Like, that's an easy one. I know you have automations, you have a lot of the digitized tools and forms and all that to make onboarding easier. That's always a good one, because when someone shows up on the first day and onboarding isn't that great, they're like, maybe I shouldn't be here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's one. And then I think the other one is through engagement. And there's probably some other ways to really retain people. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. What are some of the challenges that you're seeing around retention, and how are companies solving those?
Yeah. So in our experience of having run and built Beekeeper the last 10 plus years, yes, all the ones that you mentioned. And we believe the biggest lever is really focusing on making their jobs and their lives simpler and easier and removing those friction points. And let me give you a couple of examples of what I mean with this. I've been visiting also a number of companies in the last couple of weeks. And I'm just amazed, especially in the construction world, to see how relatively simple processes that for office workers and headquarter people seem to be just trivial and no-brainers are still a huge pain for frontline workers. One very simple example of that are, for example, PTO requests. If you go and ask, 10 of the construction customers of ours before using Beekeeper, the way they did it was they gave little coupons of paper to the frontline workers, 5 or 6 of them, where they would have to handwrite their request for taking vacation or a day off. That request would be handed in to their supervisor or manager, who would fold it into a little piece, put it into their
hopefully not lose it.
Yeah. And then at the end of the day, they might have remembered, maybe they forgot to hand it over to the HR partner that will check in the system if it's doable or not. After a couple of days in the office, maybe it comes back, and it would take just weeks for them to get an answer on whether they can or they cannot do it. And that's not counting the case where they forgot about it, they washed their shirt, and where's the request? It's not there anymore, right? So those type of simple things that people would expect to say, well, if I want to take a day off, I want to have an answer whether I can do it or not, relatively quickly and transparently, that continues to be some of that paper trails and paper processes that I'm sure nobody did it intentionally. Many, many years ago, somebody thought about it, and it has just remained like that for decades. And organizations are infested of those type of paper processes that just create a huge drag for them. So that's the type of thing that, coming back to the retention, removing those friction points is a big win for organizations. That's what we call making lives easier for everybody, also for the managers, for the HR partners, etc., that need to go through these processes. What better than just get a quick ping in your phone? Oh, I need to approve this because the balance does allow to get the days, or no, it's not because we don't have enough coverage. Fair enough. Everybody has a transparent, direct answer, right? So additionally to onboarding people well, not with a huge binder of paper that is expected for them to be read in a couple of days, but making sure that all that employee experience as they go through their workday is optimized to remove those, frankly, just stupid friction points that make people go like, you know what, I don't want to work here. There are better ways of doing this thing, because the things that they have to do for their job are so hard that that frustration just builds up. So 100% that retention is a big, big underplayed lever to make sure that you retain your workforce and really build up on the momentum and the learning of keeping people for longer rather than just be churning and continuously onboarding people.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've actually seen very similar situations play out with PTO, if you even offer it, which is another thing that some companies need to start thinking about. People have lives and sometimes they need stuff, but I've seen it happen where they submit the PTO request and maybe it's for next Friday because there's a family event or there's something that they are not going to miss. They hear nothing and now they call in or no show because they're like, well, if they couldn't take the time to get back to me on something that was super important to me, why should I take the time to call and tell them I'm not going to be there today? And it's awful that I see that cycle happen all the time because of inefficient processes, because of outdated methods. And the other thing too, that process that's 20 years old, if I'm new, I probably don't even know it exists. And now I'm asking around, like, I don't know how to take a day off. I don't know what to do. Whereas with Beekeeper and the onboarding processes that you guys have and the automations and campaigns, I mean, so many cool things. They just show up and it's day one, they're getting greeted. And one of the things I love too, we've got some of the birthday automations and some of those things. And whether they know they're automated or not, it's really cool when that post goes out that says happy birthday. And all of a sudden, people that I may not even know are wishing me a happy birthday. Like that feels good.
100%.
And it's those kind of things that make the front line feel like they belong there. Because I think belonging is really what we need to do. We need to create that environment where they feel like they belong.
Yes.
And if they feel like they belong, they'll go to the ends of the earth for you. As long as your work doesn't get in the way of the things that are important to them, which is their family, their friends, their hobbies, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about the communication piece. So you've talked about some of the processes, but there's also there's some challenges with communication with the front line. And what are some of those challenges that you're seeing in some of the ways that you're helping solve those?
Yeah, for sure. So communication, to your point, I think it's a massively important area to pay attention to. Most of the companies we work with will have some sort of top-down communication to the front line, right? As you mentioned, there's kind of like the PDF that goes to the managers with the expectation that it will be mentioned during the pre-shift briefing or is put in the payslip and sent home, etc. Many things where you're really just stepping into the dark and don't really know what the impact or effect of that is, right? So opening up this channel and digital channel to each and every single one of your employees where they feel heard, because there's also channel to provide feedback. There's a way to connect with people that maybe they just don't have access to, because in that construction site, you don't have all the people that you would need to get access to from the HR side, talent or development, etc. And just having this top-down communication be much more transparent and give the chance for leadership to be present in the front lines is massive. And it's a massive step up from what a PDF can actually do. And playing like this telephone game, hoping that in the third group of your information, it still somehow represents what you originally intended to communicate. That's one aspect. But then also the bottom-up piece of making sure that people can provide feedback, they can reach out to their manager, they can even have those conversations in their own language. All of that communication piece really brings the organization together, strengthens the culture, and to your point, also the retention, right? So I think communication for us, we always see it as the glue that brings it all together. You have the business information that needs to go in and out and for everybody to be aware of. You have the more operational communication where you need to quickly react to those business issues that just pop up, or you need to make decisions fast and make sure that you stay on track. You also have more the, let's say, softer, but also very important topics of recognition. Hey, somebody did a great job. Those birthdays reminders, those celebrations of we just completed a construction here. We're just opening it up. We hit a milestone on time, etc. Like all of those things need to be celebrated and be put out there, right? So we believe it's really that mix of topics that all fall under the very broad category of communication that is really, really important to support in all of the different ways that you mentioned, through campaigns, through chats, through streams, to make sure that you have a rich enough palette of things to work with, to make sure that you're communicating with your organization in the right way for the right purpose at the right time. So that's the thing. And then as leaders of the company, to also have the ability to see the analytics and the impact and the numbers behind it, to suddenly have transparency of what actually communication means and moves in your organization. And another thing that is really, really important, maybe the last aspect on the communication piece, is also, I would say, crisis communication and communication that needs to be fast-paced. Nowadays, we see so many cases with our customers where they get a cyber attack and they need to quickly react and tell everybody out there that something's going on and that those emails that went out are not supposed to be clicked. You have hurricanes coming, or you have on weather like snowstorms coming, where you as an organization need to react fast. And that also falls within this broader topic of communication, where as an organization, you need to be agile and be able to react quickly to those things in a way that is certain and fast. So yes, communication, as you can see, it's a very broad topic that we're very passionate about, that encompasses a lot of different layers in the organization.
I agree. There is so many opportunities around communication. I love the analytics piece too. We haven't talked on that yet.
Yeah.
The analytics, what information is received well? What information isn't received well? How do we tweak it? Did we send it to the right people? Did they engage? I mean, I love the fact that you can send a campaign and actually get read receipts to know that people are seeing that information. And one of the things when you were talking, I was thinking about was the idea of employee referrals. And I know that you guys talk about that a lot too. How often do companies be like, oh, employee referral program doesn't work? Well, it's because people don't know about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now not only are you able to communicate that to them, but you're also able to get feedback. Hey, I don't understand this piece, or hey, I'm not quite sure how this works. And so that bottom up is, I mean, I think that's the piece that's missing so often.
Yes.
Do you have a quick story to share, a specific example of how Beekeeper was able to transform a specific type of communication?
Yes, for sure. So I remember in the early days of Beekeeper, I also used to, and continue to do so, but attend these rollout programs that we do with our customers. And I remember at that time it was in a construction site where we were basically bringing it to all of the construction workers and explaining them the value of Beekeeper to be kind of like on their phone, right? And I remember at that time, one of them, I wouldn't say crying, but he almost got emotional when we started saying, hey, you know what, like these are the type of things that you can do with Beekeeper. And so I approached him after this session and asked him like, hey, I saw that you almost started kind of like crying and got like really emotional and started wiping a little bit when we were talking about it. Like what happened? And he told us that he had to actually travel to another, not to the construction site, but to the main quarter to the main office where they put actually the shifts and the schedules for the next week, to understand when exactly he had to come, in which shift he would be working. And that cost him out of the weekend time, 1.5 hours each way. So he had to travel a long time just to go and stand in front of it, because he didn't have the confidence to maybe ask a colleague or ask the manager, and he would just go and do it. And by putting a lot of that communication piece onto the Beekeeper and making sure that he would be able to chat with his manager if there needed to be a change, and he knew at all what his schedules would be and shifts for the next couple of weeks, that was just a huge win for him and a relief of those 3 hours of going back and forth that he didn't have to, but it was just time wasted there, right? And there's so many of those examples where communicating things in a digital, personalized manner have not only a massive impact for the company, but also for the lives of the frontline workers. So
3 hours on a weekend back, right? Just from something as simple as a technology platform, and what, as you were saying that story, I was like, well, that seems like pretty unique. But you know what? I bet you if we talk to companies all over, they've all got one or two things that that's what we do.
Yeah.
That's what we do.
How it has always been.
I remember I've done some technology stuff as well. And I remember we had one client that was figuring out mileage charts. for payroll every week. And it was an 8-hour job to figure out who did we pay extra mileage to and all this other stuff. And I was like, if you just did a quick Excel sheet, connected it to Google Maps, it would give you all the mileage. And just by saying, hey, maybe we don't need to do it that way, it went from 8 hours to about 10 minutes. And I imagine there are so many things and Beekeeper has so many new tools now. You guys are always releasing new tools to support this. There are probably so many ways that you could just look at your existing processes that you take for granted, that you think, oh, well, that's the way we've always done it. So that's the way we're going to keep doing it. And you could go, I could save 2 hours there, save an hour there, save 45 minutes there, make this person feel better there. And that's why I think one of the things too about Beekeeper is this is not the kind of thing where you just turn it on and boom, it works. Like you have to have the engagement. You have to have the people embrace it. And it takes some time. But I'll tell you what, any client that we've ever rolled it out with, they don't even question renewing. They're like, it's part of who we are. Yeah. And it just becomes so ingrained once they embrace it. And the value that they're getting from it is so incredible, which is why I wanted you here to share some of the stories and wisdom.
I can completely see that. And what I love seeing, it's a little bit like this effect with a laptop or a mobile phone. You remember before having that, you would think like, why would I need a smartphone, right? But once you have a smartphone, it's like, well, I probably cannot live without this. And that's a lot of the effect that you're alluding to of I don't know how we were operating before implementing something like Beekeeper here. So
my favorite milestone, this is my personal milestone. I'm sure you guys love this too, but I can always tell when the company has fully embraced it, when you have a frontline employee go on a vacation and they snap pics and post it to Beekeeper to say, look what we're doing this weekend. And people are like, oh my gosh, that's awesome. I can't wait to hear more. It's like, you've embraced this idea of being able to communicate the things that are important. And I always look for that milestone. Like, how long does that take before that happens? And that's when you see the frontline go, this is a cool tool. This is something cool. Cris, thank you so much. How do people learn more about Beekeeper and just learn more about the problems that you're solving for all of these frontline employees?
Yeah, for sure. So a couple of ways. One is on our website, so www.beekeeper.io. You can always get in contact with us and we'll be right there for you. In order to learn what else it is that we're doing with the frontline and the newest technologies, we also have a newsletter and a number of different content that we publish. For example, actually right around these dates, we will be launching our 2025 workforce pulse report, which is the biggest study on the frontline, on the trends that we're seeing. So stay tuned to the launch of that one that we can probably add with you, Ryan, in the notes and links here to the show. And we also have very unique and curated set of partners that work with us. I would say in this case, the absolute go-to person is also Ryan, that you can reach out to because he has been doing for the past 6 years so many implementations on Beekeeper, knowing inside out how to really master the change and the transformation that a company needs to go through with Beekeeper. That is just absolutely a great resource that is close to you. If you know him, go for it. Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you, Cris, for that endorsement. And yeah, I can't wait to see the results from that study. I know you guys have such great data. I got so much great data from the summit, and it just opened my eyes to some opportunities that are out there. So cannot wait to see that come out, and I cannot wait to see what's next for Beekeeper. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ryan.
Ryan Englin here. Thank you so much for listening to Titans of the Trades. If you're a titan in the construction, manufacturing, or skilled trades industry and would like to be a guest on my show, please visit podcast.corematters.com. If you found value in this interview, would you share this episode on social media? Just do a quick screenshot on your phone and share it with a friend or post it on social. And if you know someone that would be a great guest, tag them on social media to let them know about the show and include the hashtag Titans of the Trades. I love seeing your posts and guest suggestions. We are regularly putting out new episodes and content. To make sure you don't miss any episodes, click the subscribe button. Your thumbs up, ratings, and reviews go a long way to help promote the show and get me one step closer to solving the labor crisis facing the industry. Want to know more about how we're doing that? Go to our website or follow me on LinkedIn. Thanks for listening.